Shabbat Shalom, everyone, and good Shabbos from, it's a summery Huntington here. It's close to 90 degrees out there. It is a warm day, but the sun was out, the sky was blue, and there was a nice breeze the couple of times that I was out walking to and from the office and then being outside with the hounds. So it was a beautiful, beautiful day. A nice evening is promised as we move into Shabbat. This is an interesting Shabbat for me, as the 21st of May marks the 20th anniversary of my rabbinic ordination. So I have been a rabbi for 20 years. It only feels like 50, but it was a warm evening in Los Angeles 20 years ago that my class and I were ordained. All right, we're going to start by welcoming Shabbat, Kabbalat Panim, as it says in our Siddur, but Kabbalat Shabbat works just as well, the welcoming of Shabbat. We're going to begin on page 2. I have Sam, who's going to bench licht, and a reading on page 3, and then the blessing on page 2.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotah v'tzivanu lahalik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. Thank you, Sam. All right, let's continue welcoming Shabbat on page 6. Page 6 will continue with a responsive reading. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship.
May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture.
May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity.
May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet.
May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness.
May the synagogue be for all who enter the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life.
All right, we're going to continue. We're going to enter into Shabbat via song this evening. Page 20, we'll continue with Lecha Dodi. And what have we been singing? 1, 2, 3, 8, and 9. 1, 2, 3, 8, and 9. And as you know, that this comes to us from the mystical city of Sfat in the Galil, beautiful part of Israel. If you've never been, you really need to go there. If you don't go anywhere else in Israel, Sfat and the Galil are the place to be. And the mystics who originally came from Spain, most of the Makubalim, most of the Kabbalists who settled in Sfat either came from Spain directly after the expulsion in 1492. That's where a lot of the Jews went. They went to Israel, and the mystics wound up in Sfat. And so, like Shlomo Halevi Alkabates and Yosef Karo and Moshe Cordovero, you could tell by their last names that they sound Spanish or romantic in a way, from the Romance languages. There's not a Goldstein or a Greenberg among them. But they settled in Sfat and turned it into an amazing city of learning and of Kabbalah. And so, Lecha Dodi, we welcome the Shabbos bride on the top of page 20. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, penei Shabbat nikabila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabila, Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad, Yishmi'anu el hamiuchad, Adonai echad u'shmo echad, L'shem ol tiferet v'litchila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabila, Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha, Ki mekor ha'bracha, Merosh mikedem nesucha, Sof ma'aseh b'machshava tchila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabila, Mikdash melech yirmelucha, Kumitzei mitochafecha, Rav lahak shevet b'yemecha b'cha, V'hu yachamol alaychem la, Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabila, Yamin u'smol tifrotzi, V'et Adonai taritzi, Al yadish ben partzi, V'nihi smecha v'nagila, Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabila, Bohi b'shalom ateret bala, Gam b'simcha uv'tzola, Toch emunei am segula, Boi chala, Lecha dodi likrat kala, B'nei Shabbat nikabila. Let's turn the page to 22 for verses from Psalm 92, the Psalm for Shabbat. Every day of the week has a psalm, and Shabbat is no different. And so let's read together the outdented paragraph in English, and then we'll go up to the Hebrew for Tzaddik Katamar. A psalm, a song for Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai, how very subtle your designs. A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. Tzaddik katamar yifrach, ke'erez balvanon yiskeh, shetulim beveit Adonai, bechatzrot Eloheinu yahafrichu, odjenuvun v'seiva, deshenim verananim yihiyu lehagid, Ki yashar Adonai tzori v'lo avlatapo. And we'll just turn the page again to Shalom Aleichem, a traditional song that we sing as we enter into Shabbat, or some sing it towards the end of the service, but it's a Shabbat song as we welcome the angels, the two angels who come to spend Shabbat with us. Top of 24. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mihi Melech, Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech, Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedkem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi melech, Malachei Amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now we have welcomed the Shabbat properly, and now we're ready to continue with the evening service, Arvit l'Shabbat, the evening service for Shabbat, page 145, Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlik malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala u'v'zman kariv, V'yemeru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevarach Le'olam Olam Me'amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal Shmei Dekudesha Brichu Leila min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechemata damiram v'yalma v'yemeru Amen. The evening service call to service is for the evening, page 146, Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Page 147, let's read responsively in the English. Adonai, your majesty is proclaimed by the marvels of earth and sky. Sun, moon, and stars testify to your power and wisdom.
Day follows day in endless succession, and the years vanish, but your sovereignty endures.
Though all things pass, let not your glory depart from us. Help us to become co-workers with you and endow our fleeting days with abiding worth. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim. Top of 148, Ahavat Olam. Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu B'shofeinu uvkumeinu Nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki heim chayenu v'yorech yameinu, Uvahem nege yomam valayla, ve'ahavat echal tasir mimeno li'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol vavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol meodecha v'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom halvavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha uvlektecha havaderech uv'shofbecha uvkumecha ukshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu latotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. Page 151, near the middle of the page, let's read responsively. We worship the power that unites the universe, a promise of harmony for all.
Yet that oneness eludes our grasp, and perfection and evil abound.
Before our eyes, there is a vision of perfection, order, and goodness.
There is evil enough to break the heart, and there is good enough to exalt the soul.
When will redemption come?
Where again everyone will claim for ourselves.
Long ago, we escaped the tyranny of Egypt. Our people saw the power of the Most High.
We learned God's presence redeems time and event, so we celebrate this power that makes for freedom.
Top of 152. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha Nedar ba'kodesh, Nohora tehilot, Ohosef ele, Malchutecha ra'u vanecha, Bokeyam lifnei Moshe, Ze'eli anu v'yamru, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed, ונאמר כי פד אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. In the evening there are additional brachot that follow the Shema. Right? It doesn't. In the morning, it goes when we say Ga'al Yisrael, it moves right into the Amidah. But in the evening, we have Hashkivenu, asking God to watch over us as we sleep. And we'll sing the first two lines, and then we'll read together in English. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'ha'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom V'ha'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Give us a place to rest, O God. Shelter us in the long, soft evening shadows of your truth. You are true protection and safety. In your presence, we find love and acceptance. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, V'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. Page 154, it is not Shabbat without Vishamru, verses from the book of Exodus, reminding us of our commitment to guard the Shabbat. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. All right, we are at the centerpiece, the center point, actually, of the evening Shabbat service, the tefillah, also known as the Amidah, or more for the everyday, it's the Shmona Esrei, the 18 benedictions, but really there's 19, but don't worry about rabbinic counting, right? So, but it is the central prayer in the tradition. Every service has one. And this evening, we're going to begin on 155, chant 155, 156, and 157 together, and then continue silently through the end on 167. We're going to begin together, 155. Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai sifatai tiftach, ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora, El Elyon, Romel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Goel Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magin, Baruch atah Adonai, Magin Avraham, V'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechaye Metim Atah Rav Lahoshia, Morid hatal, Mechakel Chaim bechesed, Bechayei Meitim berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Micham hocha bal givurot, Umido melach, Melech mimit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Meneman ata l'hachayot meitim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh ha-meitim. If you're still completing your Amidah, can you please continue at your own pace. Let's turn to page 160 in the middle, and let's read together. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may we all live in such a way that this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. All right, page 163. A little bit of hoda'ah, a little bit of gratitude. Lots to be grateful for this week. As I mentioned, it's the 20th anniversary of my ordination today, so always grateful for that. What else? Lots of little things. No really big things this week that happened. Lots of little things that make me stop and do a little bit of hakarat hatov, recognizing the good. And so, top of 163, let's read responsively. For the good in us, which calls us to a better life, we give thanks.
For the strength to improve the world with our hearts and our hands, we offer praise.
For the desire in us, which leads us to work for peace, we are grateful.
For life and nature, harmony and beauty, for the hope of tomorrow, all praise to the source of being.
All right, and as always, we close out the Amidah. All the major prayers have a plea for peace in them. Today is more than before. We need peace in the world. especially in Israel, where tensions remain high, even though there is a ceasefire in place. Page 164, Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon Lechol ha-shalom, ki atahu melech adon, lechol ha-shalom. Shalom Rahav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rahav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. V'tov b'necha livarech et Amcha Yisrael, v'chol heitu v'chol sha'a, b'shlomeh. Shalom Rahav al Yisrael, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rahav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. All right, we're going to turn ahead to page 253, the Mishaberach, prayer asking God to watch over those who need some healing, and a reminder to us to reach out and remember them, not to forget that there are people who need us to reach out and see how they're doing. And if you know anyone, have anybody in your family or in your circle who need a little bit of extra healing this Shabbat, whether it's a physical healing or a mental or emotional, even spiritual, keep them in your thoughts and close to your heart. We're in the middle of page 253. Misheberach Avoteinu Mekor habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach Imotenu Mikor habracha Le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We're going to turn to pages 258 and 259 for prayers for our congregation, for our country, for Jerusalem, and for Medinat Yisrael. And we'll read these together. Source of all being, may the children of this community learn these passions from us: love of Torah, devotion and prayer, support of the needy. May we guide with integrity, and may our leadership be in your service. May those who teach and nourish us be blessed with satisfaction, and may we appreciate their time and their devotion. Bless us with the fruits of wisdom and understanding, and may our efforts bring fulfillment and joy. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry, and take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing, and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in darkness. Sha'alu shalom Yerushalayim, yish la'u yu ohavayich. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May those who love you prosper. Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'golo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Smichat Geulatenu, Hagein Aleha B'yarat Chastecha, Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha, Ushlach Orcha V'hamitcha L'Rosheha Soreha V'yoetzeha, V'takneim B'eitzah Tova Milfanecha, V'natata Shalom Ba'aretz, V'simchat Olam Liyoshveha, V'nomar Amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. All right, friends. Last week, first Shabbat Shalom and Good Shabbos. And last week, we started a brand new book of the Torah, Sefer Bamidbar. And not a lot happened in that first parsha. A lot of numbers, a lot of counting, a lot of names, not a lot of activity. And this week, Parshat Naso, not a lot of action as well. Believe me, there's going to be action coming up. But right now, Naso is finishing up, concluding the census that we started last week. And this week, we finished, the census with counting families that are associated with the Levites, right? So we have the Gershonites who are counted, and they're between the ages of 30 and 50, the ones who are counted. And the Gershonites are tasked with carrying the sanctuary coverings, the hangings, the cords, the accessories, and the altar. Right? So they're kind of schleppers, right? But it's not just, schlepping. They're carrying the focal point of the sacrificial cult. And so there's a lot of reverence that goes with that, but they're the carriers. And they're going to be under the auspices of Aaron's son, Itamar. He's going to supervise. And the count was 2,630 Gershonites. After the Gershonites came the Merarites, again between 30 and 50. And they're going to carry the planks, the bars, the posts, the sockets, the pegs, and the cords. All right. So when the sanctuary, the Mishkan, is disassembled, and the pieces are separated, the Merarites are going to carry those, and they count at 3,200. And then finally, we have the Kohathites, which we heard about last week, and they're going to also transport parts of the sanctuary, I guess whatever's left, and their number is 2,750 for a grand total of 8,580 Levites who are tasked with carrying of the different pieces of the Mishkan. After we're finished with the census, we move on, and we go back to a tried and true discussion of anyone who has an oozing open sore or who may have touched a corpse must leave the camp. right? We remember that from Tazria and Metzorah, that while today we think that these were things like dermatitis or psoriasis or some kind of rash, back in biblical times, they didn't have this kind of understanding. So when an oozing sore or an oozing pussy wound, not a wound they would understand, but like a pussy sore that you got, people would wonder, is it contagious? What can it do? And so you had to leave the camp. And coming into contact with a dead body automatically makes you ritually impure. So you have to go through that process of purification. We get a little bit of civil law then, which actually then becomes a part of, I don't want to call it Jewish theology, but the Jewish thinking about repentance. Because it says if a person wrongs another person, right, and that's the wronging is the key word there, part of atoning for it is confessing, meaning saying that you did it, owning up to it, and restitution. All right, and so they bring the case of if you steal something, right, stolen property, you have to return it or its worth, right? So say you stole an animal and ate it, right? You have to pay the worth plus 20%, right? So it's not just you returning it. It's not just saying, well, here's what I took, here it's back. There's a penalty attached to it, 20% that goes back. If the owner is dead for whatever reason, right, that after you stole it, somehow before they found out or whatever, the owner died, you make restitution along with a ram, and you give that to the sanctuary priest who's on duty at the time, right? So you're not off the hook. You're thinking, well, as long as they don't know that I stole it, they can find out after the person's dead, and then, the person's dead. So, there's no need for it to be returned. No, Torah says you still have to make restitution. And then we get one of the more interesting rituals in the Torah. It's really, really arcane, and it's really bizarre. It's called the sota, right? And the sota is, what happens is, a man accuses his wife of being unfaithful, and there are no witnesses, right? So we know from previous parshiot that you have to have witnesses, right? You just can't make an accusation. Well, the husband is able to make this accusation without witnesses. And of course, the wife is going to say, you're wrong, I didn't, right? The husband is jealous, whatever. So she is made to drink the waters of bitterness. Right? Now, it's an apt name because when you find out what's in the water, that's enough to turn your stomach. But if you had to drink this, you would be bitter at the person who accused you and made you drink this. Right? So you take water, you take some earth, some dirt, and the ashes from the meal offering, right? And you put them in this concoction, and the woman has to drink it. Now, the ancients felt that if you drank this would put you into a trance. And if you went into a trance, you were guilty. But if you didn't go into a trance, you were innocent, right? So, like I said, this is a fairly bizarre ritual that I think just harkens back to that old kind of folk magic or that old folk not medicine, but these old folk traditions on it worked for somebody, and so we're going to keep trying it, right? So this is the sota. What I always wanted to know is after this, right, and she's innocent, how did she ever trust her husband again? How did she want to go back to him, right? She's obviously innocent, and but the Torah remains thankfully silent on that. And then we get another interesting piece, the Nazir. The Nazir. The most famous Nazir, well, we have two famous ones. But the most famous one that everybody knows, they might not know that he's a Nazir, a Nazirite, is Samson, Shimshon, right? And this is a person who is not a Kohen or a Levi, but wants to up his religious game, or her religious game. So they take a vow not to cut their hair, not to drink wine or intoxicants, and not to touch a corpse. And they ask something of God, and they take this vow upon them for a certain amount of time, and then they leave. So it's an interesting thing. It was popular, this idea of the Nazirite, up through the Middle Ages. And then after the Middle Ages, it kind of faded away. So it's interesting. And then the last major piece is we get the Kohanic blessing. The Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ye'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Right? 3 words, 5 words, and then 7 words. Aharon is commanded to use this he doesn't bless the children of Israel, but he's invoking God's blessing on them. It's not a prayer. It is not a prayer. It's a blessing. And prayers and blessings are very, very different. So when we refer to the Kohanic blessing, we refer to it as a blessing because we're asking God to bestow goodness, peace, all sorts of wonderful things upon us. And then the Parsha closes with the sanctuary being consecrated again and Moses going inside to encounter God who is inside the Mishkan. So that's Parshat Naso in a nutshell. All right, friends, today I'm doing something a little bit differently. All of my drashot are original pieces that I write. But every once in a while, I find something that says it much better than I could possibly say it. And so this week I came across an article by a man named Blake Ezra, who writes about the Middle East and Jewish life. And it was a fairly substantial essay, and I cut a number of paragraphs out that were not germane to, I think, his main point. They're important to the article as a whole when you're getting it, but you can have the article without these paragraphs. And I want to offer it to you so that you might have some talking points when people come after you or when you enter into a discussion about Israel and Hamas and the Palestinian situation. One of the things that, as a rabbi, I hear a lot from people is, what can I say to my friends who, no matter what I say about Israel, they have a yeah, but, or a what about, right? This whole idea of whataboutism, right? If you say something about one side, you have to say something else about the other side. And so I want to share these paragraphs with you because I think they're very powerful and meaningful, and hopefully will give you some talking points. I hesitate to say ammunition, but some talking points for when you're discussing Israel with people who might see things a little bit differently than you do. Again, this is it's entitled "I'm Fed Up" by Blake Ezra, and he's an Englishman, also Jewish. But here he starts. I'm fed up. I don't want to write this, but I'm fed up. I'm fed up, and I've seen it all before. Israel is complicated. The action of this week is simply the very top surface of a collection of layers of history, of subplots of hurt. People study the region for years and still only scratch the surface. I'm fed up of the, quote, woke celebrities demonizing Israel and turning a blind eye to the thousands of rockets being launched by Hamas at Israeli civilians. They are unwittingly giving their celebrity endorsement to terror. Demonizing only one side of a conflict is equal to making excuses for the behavior of the other side. People from Love Island are unknowingly becoming marketing execs for Hamas in Europe. Go ahead, read that again. Love Island is the big reality show in Britain, right? A bunch of strangers show up on an island and love ensues, right? I think we have something like that in this country. I call it Narishkeit. He continues, I am fed up of uneducated influencers suddenly acting like experts in the Middle East. Do they proclaim to be experts on South Ossetia, Kashmir, or Northern Cyprus? No. Did they fill their Instagram stories with objections to Assad gassing his own people in Syria, or the Uyghur Muslims being put into actual concentration camps in China? No. Have they ever heard of the Gaza disengagement, Mohammed al-Dura, the Jenin massacre, the Camp David Accords, the Hamas Charter, or any other piece of context needed to really understand this situation? Of course not. Yet they are happy to hashtag pray for Palestine whilst ignoring the thousands of rockets being fired by Hamas at Israeli citizens, families rushing their children into bomb shelters. It seems that every country has a right to defend itself from acts of war, apart from the only Jewish one. I'm fed up with the world ignoring Hamas as though they were nothing more than a bad smell, while demonizing Israel at every opportunity. If you are an influencer and have posted more against Israel than against Hamas, you are literally doing the dirty work of a terrorist organization. Oh, and by the way, if you wear that bikini or hold hands with your same-sex partner in Gaza, you'll be killed and paraded through the streets as bloodthirsty men fire guns in the air and shout about how great God is. Wear the bikini and be openly gay in Tel Aviv, you'll fit right in, as long as you have tattoos and a cute dog as well. I'm fed up of those who accuse Israel of genocide, meaning, quote, the deliberate killing of a large number of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group, unquote. There are more Palestinians now than there were 50 years ago. That does not happen during a genocide. Anybody who makes this claim is beyond sense and reason, fueled by hate. It's preposterous and pathetic, especially as Hamas makes no secret of its will to commit genocide on Jews. You're actually gaslighting. Stop it. I'm fed up with the word disproportionate, which makes no sense at all to anyone with a functioning brain cell, yet it is still trotted out as the laziest way to demonize Israel. Quote, Israel is acting in a disproportionate way, unquote, they say. Quote, Israel should be able to defend itself from terror, but it must not be disproportionate, unquote, they tell us. If you held a knife and told me you were going to murder my family and tried to do it, I would use the gun in my pocket to stop you. Is that disproportionate? If 8 Israelis are killed by Hamas, does that make it okay for Israel to kill 8 Palestinians? Of course not. Hamas has fired over 2,000 rockets indiscriminately at Israel this week, each one trying to kill civilians. If Israel fired 2,000 rockets into Gaza, each one trying to kill civilians, is that okay as it's proportionate? Of course not. Israel is engaged in the most precise counterterrorism operation in history, calling ahead to warn Gazans of their next target, preparing to go in on foot, knowing that young Israelis will get killed, in order to minimize the civilian casualties on the Palestinian side. I'm fed up of anyone using that word as a way to criticize Israel. It's lazy and meaningless. Israel is not perfect, but it offers equal rights to all citizens and has Arab citizens in every part of society, from Supreme Court judges to members of parliament to university professors. Whilst the Hamas Charter calls for every Jew to be killed anywhere in the world, including me. Are you anti-racist? Did you post a black square? Did you take a knee? If you are anti-racist, then you should stand against Hamas. I'm fed up of people who are liberal in every other sense, misplacing their concern in this situation. Israel has the only Pride weekend anywhere in the Middle East, an incredible celebration of love held in Tel Aviv every year and enjoyed by thousands of people from all around the world. Meanwhile, Hamas throws gay people from rooftops. If you are against homophobia, you should stand against Hamas. Israel has more elections than any other Middle Eastern country, allowing all citizens the right to vote, from Jewish men to Muslim women. Meanwhile, Hamas will never hold an election, and in the West Bank, Mahmoud Abbas is in the 16th year of his 4-year term and just canceled the forthcoming elections. If you believe in democracy, you should stand against Hamas. By the way, standing against Hamas does not make you anti-Palestinian. I would argue that if you stand up against Hamas, it means that you care about the welfare of Palestinian people and want them to prosper. Sky News interviewed the head of a hospital in Ashkelon in Israel, asking how they've managed to continue their work under constant rocket fire from Hamas in Gaza. She explained that they built a 300-bed hospital underground in recent years, protecting them from rocket fire and allowing them to continue saving lives without disruption. Meanwhile, in Gaza, Hamas store rockets under Al-Shifa Hospital, as they know it would be disastrous PR for Israel if they target that ammunition stockpile. Israel builds a hospital under their hospital. Hamas built an ammunition store under theirs. Doesn't that speak volumes? If you want an extreme fundamentalist Islamic terror state on the shores of the Mediterranean, keep sharing those memes which ignore Hamas as a problem and vow to free Palestine. Again, celebrities, liberals, well-intentioned Instagrammers, you are unwittingly doing online marketing for homophobic and racist murderers. I'm fed up. Every day Palestinians are fed up. Every day Israelis are fed up. This is not a conflict between Palestine and Israel. It's a conflict between decent people on both sides and the most perverse extremists on earth. Change your hashtags to hashtag Shalom, Salam, Peace, which acknowledges hurt on both sides. It acknowledges that the ultimate goal for all decent people is peace, something Hamas would never see. Years ago, as an idealistic young left-wing student of the Middle East, an elderly family member told me, quote, "If the Arabs put their weapons down tomorrow, there would be no war. If Israel put their weapons down tomorrow, there would be no Israel," unquote. I laughed at the time at such a sweeping and simplistic statement, but it's much closer to the truth than I ever realized. There's a simple equation here. Hamas wants all Jews dead, and the Jews refuse to let that happen. How dare they? I'm fed up of people taking news reports on face value. Do you really believe the most complicated region on earth is that simple? Nobody wants to see young Israeli soldiers stopping and searching Palestinian ambulances. It's difficult to watch, and to most decent people around the world, it's a disgrace. But ever since Hamas first used the official Red Crescent ambulances to smuggle suicide bombers and explosives in 2002, starting with a woman suicide bomber, Wafa Idris, who worked as a medical secretary for the Palestinian Red Crescent, being accomplices in the murder of innocent Israelis, what choice does Israel have? Things are not simple. Any other country would do the same. It's very easy to criticize from your armchair. One of my favorite phrases is, "Everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Be kind." Perhaps once in a while, this can apply to your perception of Israel, a country that faces perverse threats to its very existence every single day. Challenges you know nothing about, living in New York City or London. Maybe tonight, when you pray for Palestine, perhaps keep the millions of Israeli families in your prayers too. The normal people who are running into bomb shelters with their kids, praying that it will be over soon. There is suffering on both sides. Real people with real dreams on both sides. I'm fed up. Very powerful piece. I have it on my Facebook page, the entire essay. I think as Blake Ezra hits it. I think he hits it on the head. Those of you who hear me pronounce Hamas, hear me pronounce it technically incorrectly. You're supposed to pronounce it as Hamas, but the Hebrew word for violence sounds a lot like that, Hamas. So since Hamas is filled with violence, I just remind myself that every time I speak their name. But I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you found some talking points that you'll feel comfortable using when people continually pile on Israel for defending itself. All right, Sam, what time is it?
Kiddush.
It's Kiddush time. Yes, last week I was here by myself. I had to remind myself that it was Kiddush time. Almost forgot it. Anyway, we're going to continue with Kiddush. Thank you, Sam, for reminding me. Vahi erev, vahi voker, yom hashishi, vayechulu hashamayim v'haaretz, v'chol tzivam, vayechal Elohim bayom hashvi'i, melachto asher asa, vayishbot bayom hashvi'i, mikol melachto asher asa, vayavarech Elohim et yom hashvi'i, Vayikadesh oto, ki vo shavat mikol malachto, asher bara Elohim la'asot. Savri, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon hinchilahanu zikaron l'maaseh bereshit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'ei kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta V'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekahadesh HaShabbat. All right. I'm going to start closing out our service with Aleinu. And you'll find Aleinu, page 282. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon ha'kol, la'teit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kagoye haratzot, V'lo samanu kamishpachot hadama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamodam. V'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Shehu noteh shamayim v'yoser haaretz, u'moshav yekaro b'shamayim mimal, u'shchin atuzo, b'gol meromi, u'Eloheinu ein od, emet malkeinu efes ulato, kakahatu v'torato, V'yadata hayom v'hashemota el levavecha ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim b'shamayim mimal v'al haaretz mitachat ein od. הכתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו echad. This week, we observed the following yard sites: Morton S. Cohn, Ed Island's brother-in-law; Rebecca Eisenberg, Mary Cantor's sister and Rena's aunt; Samuel Footlick, Betty Kolker's maternal grandfather; Edith Feder Gamoran, sister of Herman, Simon Henry, and Noah Feder; Nikki Annette Goldstein Katz, Bernice Stern's sister; Jack Pressman, Tom's father; Edith Fallon, Harry's first wife, mother of Eileen, Ron, and Denise; Dr. Herman Poland, relative of Ronald Poland; Bessie Schlossberg, mother of Gazella Macinter; Nancy Snyder, Stephen's mother; Charles Poland Jr., husband of Carol, son of Ruth and Charles; Esther Mussman, Herman Glazer's aunt; Minnie Friedberg, Goldie Feder's sister; Morris Edelson, relative of Evelyn Weil; Leonard E. Hartz, husband of Ruby, father of Murray and William. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. May their memories be bound up in the bond of life. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me try this one more time. May their souls be bound up in the bond of life. May their memories be a blessing to us all, and may they all rest in peace. Mourner's Kaddish for mourners and those observing yahrzeit, page 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma tivrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam olamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpahar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudisha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, v'amiran v'yalma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. B'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. All right, friends, we are at the very, very end of our service. Just a couple of quick announcements. Services tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and then on Sunday at 9 a.m. And then it's a quiet week. It is. Don't tell anybody. But it's a quiet week after last week with Shavuot and the learning and the services and everything. No adult ed this week, although you'll be getting an email. For the summer, we're going to spend the summer learning Talmud together. And so I've picked out a number of interesting Talmudic stories that teach us a lot about what the rabbis were thinking about. And so we're going to learn all about the Talmud, and you'll be getting that email early this week, and it's going to start a week from Sunday at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoons, 2 Sundays a month for the summer. That's going to be our adult ed. But before we get to that, you have to go through Wednesday, and Wednesday is the best little Yiddish choir anywhere. And so you'll get your Zoom link, or if you have your Zoom link, it's the same link week after week. And then after Wednesday, it's a hop, skip, and a jump, just right back here for Shabbat. So as the sun sets, I recommend that you go out and spend a little time outdoors, basking in the beauty that is Erev Shabbat. And I think that's it. I think I got everything. Yeah. Okay. I want to thank Sam and Judy for being here. Sam for, of course, reminding me about Kiddush. All right, page 321. We'll close out this week with Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa b'chefza kol azai melech shemo nikra v'acharei kiglot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yiyeh b'tifara v'hu echad v'in sheni v'hamshil lo v'hachbira b'li reshit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzor chevli b'yeit tzara v'hu nisi humanosli Menat kosi biyom ekra, biyahado apkid ruchi, b'eti shan b'yahira, b'im ruchi geviyati, Adonai li velo yira. All right, let's see who says hello this beautiful Shabbat evening. We have Jenny Bro, Shabbat Shalom, and Mazal Tov on your ordination anniversary. Thank you, Jenny. ML Glazer and Herman Glazer. Good Shabbat and peace to all. Thank you. Same to you and Amen. Kathleen Judd. Oh, that's my mom. Shabbat Shalom to all. May you have another 20 years. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Again from Mom. Shabbat Shalom from Cliff. Well, okay. And Shabbat Shalom from Terry and Phil, and congratulations on your anniversary. Well, thank you, Mom, 3 times. Wow, great. Everybody have a wonderful Shabbat. Be careful out there, and we'll see you soon.
And we're off the air.